Welcome, it's Amy from Amorini Designs, and today I'm here to show you how I hide a zipper in the bottom seam of my pillows when I am making a pillow cover. The first thing that you're going to do is cut your pillow front and your pillow back to be the same size. In this case, I'm making a 20-inch pillow, but you can make this really for any size pillow. The next thing that you will need after you have your pillow front and your pillow back is your zipper. And you want your zipper to be at least an inch or two shorter than the length of your pillow. So again, my pillow is 20 inches. This zipper is an 18-inch zipper. So I have an inch on both sides here of my zipper. Now, what I want to do is make sure that I have enough room so that I can cut off these metal tabs as I'm sewing around my zipper, and make sure that I have enough give that I can open up my pillow and get my pillow forms in and out easily. You can use a zipper that is longer than this, but you don't want one that's too much shorter than this because it will make it really hard to get your pillow forms in and out of your pillow. So I try to shoot for an inch or two, but I often will use what I have on hand. But don't go much shorter than maybe 2 or 3 inches shorter than the length of your pillow. You could probably go down to a 17-inch zipper. You might be able to get by with a 16-inch zipper if you're using like a down pillow form, but I wouldn't go any smaller than that if you can absolutely help it. So once you have your zipper, if you have a zipper that is the right size, a good size like this one is, you will use your zipper as your guide. Otherwise, what you're going to do is just make some marks on your pillow, on the bottom seam of your pillow back, about an inch and a half, inch to an inch and a half in from both sides. So I usually go about an inch on either side, and I will mark it either with a pin or just with my pencil. And it doesn't have to be exact. This is just giving you a reference for your stitching, and it will help you place your zipper in the next step. So once you have your places marked, you are going to take your two pieces, your pillow front and your pillow back. You're going to line up the bottom seam of them, and you're going to take it to your sewing machine. And then you are going to stitch along this line, this seam, using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to use your regular stitch length to start until you get to your pin or your mark that is an inch in from the side. Once you get to this mark, you will stop stitching and you will increase your stitch length. On my machine, I increased it from a 2.5 to a 5, but you want to take it from a regular stitch to a basting stitch at this point, and then you're going to stitch all the way along that seam, again using your basting stitch until you get to your second mark. At this point, you're going to return to your normal regular stitch length and stitch the rest of this seam. So once you have that seam sewn, you are going to take your pillow cover to your iron, and you are going to press this seam open so that it's nice and flat. Now, I am using black thread here so that you can see my stitches a little better, but I would normally use a more matching thread, one that disappears a little better. So you are going to take your pillow, and I'm going to turn this so you can see the seam well. And once you've pressed your seam flat, the next thing you're going to do is take your zipper and you are going to place it the right side down, so with the zipper pulled down, and you're going to center it between those two marks. So if your zipper is longer than this, you just want to make sure that it is going to be right up into the stitching, and that your tape is going to fall in between the two marks where your stitching transitions from a regular stitch length to the basting stitch length. So I'm just going to put this face down and I'm going to center it. Now, the other thing that you want to pay attention to is making sure that where the two pieces of the zipper tape meet, where your teeth are, that it's right over the seam. That way, when you go and finish your zipper and your seam, you can unpick those stitches and your zipper is what's going to be exposed. So you have your zipper tape centered, and then you are going to pin this down all the way around and pin it in place. And I'm just gonna put a couple of pins in here and show you. And then you're gonna take this to your sewing machine. What you will do is you will go 1/4 inch, and I will switch to my zipper foot, and you will stitch 1/4 inch around this entire zipper. So I usually start somewhere in the middle. I'll stitch around, stitch across, and whenever I stitch across my teeth, my zipper here, I will back stitch a couple of times just to help reinforce my zipper and make sure that my pull doesn't come loose at any point. If your zipper is a little bit longer, you want to pay attention to these metal bits and make sure that they're not going to fall in your stitching anywhere. So if this was too close, if this little metal tab was going to stick out further and might be about 1/2 inch away where it might run a risk of getting into my next seam, I will trim this off. So make sure that you stitch on one side, on the inside of it, to make sure that you secure the zipper tape if you need to remove those metal pieces. Okay, stitch around, stitch across the zipper tape, back stitch and forth between the teeth, stitch again all the way down, again using your 1/4 inch seam. Once you get to where this the pull is, you'll stop. I'll put my needle down. I will pull my my pull a little ways down, and then I will continue stitching. And you'll want to make sure that once this pull slides down, now you have 2 loose ends of zipper tape here. So you want to make sure that you are pushing them in so that your teeth are again lining up right over where this seam is between the 2 pieces, your pillow front and your pillow back. So I will, sometimes I will already have that pulled down so that I can pin those in place. And then sometimes I will just let it get loose and then just make sure that I'm paying attention as I'm sewing around that part. So again, back and forth every time you cross the teeth to make sure that you're anchoring those teeth together really well, and then come all the way back to where you started stitching. So once you get to that point, then I'll come back and show you what we do next. So I wanted to show one thing that I did that is something to kind of watch out for. Is I always find it tempting when I'm sewing the zipper on to stitch close to the zipper teeth because it fits so nicely in my zipper foot and it just seems nice and convenient, but don't do that. You want to make sure that you are stitching far enough away from your zipper teeth that when you come to your pull, as you've sewn around here and come across and come up, that you have enough room between your stitching lines to actually push your zipper pull forward. If you have sewn too close to your teeth, then you're not going to have enough room for the zipper pull. So you want to make sure that your stitch lines are at least a little bit further apart than the width of your zipper pull. Now, if you have done that, like I did, and you find yourself stuck and you can't move your zipper out of the way, then what you can do is go ahead and turn your pillow over and start pulling apart using your seam ripper to pull that seam apart, which is what the next step is anyway. And so you can just kind of pull apart this little bit and then push your zipper pull up and then continue stitching back to where you started from. So once you've sewn around all 4 edges, again, try to back stitch across your teeth, then you are ready for the almost final step. So you're going to flip your pillow over, and you're going to use your seam ripper and you're going to pull apart the seam, rip apart the seam along the tape. So from where your back stitching is across your teeth on one end to where your back stitching is across your teeth on the other end, you're just going to take your seam ripper and you're just going to pop those stitches. So this is where it comes in really handy to use just your little ball part, and you just kind of slide it in. And this is why we did the basting stitches, to make it nice and easy to pop those stitches out and open up that seam. This is also where using thread that matches comes in handy, because then all these little threads that are sticking out aren't quite, I mean, obviously we'll go back and clean up all the threads, but if you miss a couple, it won't be so obvious if your thread matches a little bit. So then I just come in and get all the way up to those back stitching, so I have the full length of my zipper available to me. You're just going to pull out those threads, and then what you're gonna do, you're just gonna open up your zipper pull about halfway. You're gonna re-bring your front and your back pieces together. And then you are going to sew around the last 3 sides of your pillow. Now what I typically do is I will fold up this seam here, and this will be where I start. And again, you're gonna use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you will just lay them out, fold this seam allowance on the bottom up on both sides, and then start here, back stitch, use your 1/2 inch seam, go around across the top and back down the other side, again back stitching at the end, and then all you have to do is turn it right side out and your pillow cover is finished.